Welcome to Fear Files, where nightmares come alive and the shadows whisper their dark secrets. Brace yourself as we dive into chilling tales that will test your courage and make your heart race. Each story is a journey into the unknown, where fear lurks around every corner. Are you ready to face the darkness? Let the terror begin.
The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the dense canopy of Drakensberg Forest as Alex, Mitchell, and his friends made their way deeper into the woods. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and decaying leaves, the ground crunching underfoot with each step they took. Alex glanced around at his companions, their faces lit with excitement and a touch of apprehension. It had been years since they'd all been together like this, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant awaited them in these ancient woods. "Hey, Alex, how much further?" called out Sarah, her breath visible in the chilly air. She was the smallest of the group, but had a fiery spirit that belied her size. Alex knew she was the most excited about this trip, having always been fascinated by the supernatural. "Not far now," Alex replied, consulting the map on his phone. "We should reach the campsite in about 15 minutes. "Good," muttered Mark, adjusting the heavy pack on his shoulders. "I'm ready to set up camp and get a fire going. It's getting colder by the minute." Mark was the practical one, always prepared for any situation. His military training had instilled in him a sense of order and readiness that the group often relied on. Alex admired his friend's steadfastness, knowing that Mark's presence would be invaluable during this trip. Beside Mark, Rachel and Jason walked hand in hand, their whispered conversations and shared glances a testament to their deep bond. They had been inseparable since college, their relationship weathering the storms of adulthood with a strength that Alex both envied and respected. As they continued deeper into the forest, the daylight began to wane, and the shadows grew longer and more pronounced. The eerie silence of the woods enveloped them, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a bird. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, though he dismissed it as paranoia brought on by the unsettling quietude of the forest. "We're here," Alex announced as they emerged into a small clearing. The campsite was perfect, surrounded by towering trees that offered protection from the wind. They quickly set to work pitching tents and gathering firewood, the activity a welcome distraction from the growing sense of unease. As night fell, the temperature dropped, and they huddled around the fire, its warm glow a comforting beacon in the darkness. They shared stories and laughter, the camaraderie lifting their spirits. Yet, as the hours passed and the fire began to dwindle, the oppressive silence of the forest returned, and with it, a creeping sense of dread. "Did anyone else hear that?" Sarah asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. The group fell silent, listening intently. Faint whispers seemed to echo through the trees, indistinct and haunting. "It's probably just the wind," Mark said, though his voice lacked conviction. Alex could see the uncertainty in his friend's eyes. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at his friends, their faces pale and tense in the firelight. They were all hearing it now, a cacophony of voices that seemed to speak directly to their souls. "What the hell is that?" Jason muttered, his grip on Rachel's hand tightening. "I don't know," Alex replied, his mind racing. He stood up, looking around the clearing. The shadows seemed to lengthen unnaturally, stretching towards them like grasping hands. "We need to stay calm and stick together." The whispers grew louder still, forming words that sent shivers down their spines, words that spoke of their darkest fears and regrets, of secrets they had never shared with anyone. "Alex, what's happening?" Rachel's voice trembled with fear, her eyes wide and haunted. "I don't know," Alex repeated, though he had a sinking feeling he did. The legends of Drakensberg Forest, the stories of those who had disappeared. He had always dismissed them as myths, but now, standing in the heart of the forest, he couldn't deny the malevolent presence that surrounded them. "We need to get out of here," Mark said, his voice firm. "Now!" But as they turned to leave, the shadows seemed to close in, and the whispers became a deafening roar. Alex felt a wave of fear wash over him, a fear so intense it left him paralyzed. He looked at his friends, their faces contorted with terror, and knew they were all experiencing the same thing. In that moment, Alex realized the truth. They had trespassed into a domain ruled by a malevolent demon that fed on fear, and their only hope of survival lay in confronting their own inner demons before the night consumed them all. As the whispers continued to echo around them, Alex struggled to keep his mind clear. He knew they needed a plan, but the fear was overwhelming, clouding his thoughts. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. "Listen to me," he said, his voice cutting through the cacophony. "We need to stay together. Don't let the fear control you. It's feeding off our fear." "But how do we fight it?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. "We confront it," Alex replied, his resolve hardening. "We face our fears head on. It's the only way to weaken it." Mark nodded, his expression grim. "He's right. We can't let it win." One by one, they shared their deepest fears, the whispers intensifying with each revelation. Alex felt a pang of guilt as he listened, knowing that his friends were baring their souls in a desperate attempt to survive. Sarah's fear was of abandonment, a result of her parents' divorce and her mother's subsequent departure. She had always feared being left alone, unwanted and unloved. Mark's fear was failure, a constant companion since his childhood. Despite his outward confidence, he was haunted by the fear of letting down those who depended on him. Rachel's fear was of losing Jason, the love of her life. She had watched her parents' marriage fall apart and lived in constant fear that history would repeat itself. Jason's fear was of losing control, of being unable to protect those he loved. He had always been the strong one, the protector, and the thought of being powerless terrified him. And Alex's fear was of the unknown. The tragedy that had taken his sister's life had left him questioning everything, his need for answers a constant, gnawing presence in his mind. As they shared their fears, the shadows seemed to retreat slightly, the whispers growing fainter. But the demon was not done with them yet. "Stay close," Alex urged, his eyes scanning the darkness. "We need to keep moving." They made their way through the forest, the darkness pressing in around them. The whispers continued, now laced with a mocking tone, as if the demon was taunting them. "Do you really think you can escape?" it seemed to say. "You belong to me now." Alex ignored the voice, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. He knew they couldn't stop, couldn't let the fear take hold again. But as they walked, the hallucinations began. Each camper was haunted by vivid, terrifying visions tailored to their deepest fears. Sarah saw her mother walking away, leaving her alone in the dark. Mark saw himself failing, letting down his friends as they called out for help. Rachel saw Jason disappearing into the shadows, leaving her alone and heartbroken. Jason saw himself losing control, unable to protect those he loved. And Alex saw his sister, her face pale and haunted, calling out to him from the darkness. "Help me, Alex," she whispered. "Why didn't you save me?" The hallucination was so real, so vivid, that Alex found himself reaching out, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I tried. I'm so sorry." But as he reached for her, she vanished, leaving him alone in the dark. "Alex!" Mark's voice snapped him out of the trance. "We need to keep moving." Alex nodded, wiping his eyes. "I'm coming." They continued through the forest, each step a battle against the fear and the hallucinations. They knew they couldn't stop. couldn't let the demon win. But as the night wore on, the hallucinations grew stronger, more intense. Each camper was pushed to the brink of madness, their own fears consuming them. "Stay together," Alex urged, his voice strained. "Don't let it break us." But despite their best efforts, the group began to splinter. The fear was too strong, the hallucinations too real. Sarah was the first to break, her fear of abandonment driving her to run into the darkness, her cries echoing through the trees. Mark chased after her, his fear of failure spurring him on. "Sarah, wait!" he called, his voice desperate. "Don't leave." But Sarah was beyond hearing, her mind consumed by the hallucinations. Rachel and Jason clung to each other, their fears intertwined. But even their bond couldn't withstand the onslaught of terror. Jason's fear of losing control manifested in violent outbursts, lashing out at shadows and unseen threats. Rachel's fear of losing him drove her to cling tighter, their fear feeding off each other in a vicious cycle. "Jason, stop!" Rachel pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "You're scaring me." "I can't," Jason cried, his voice breaking. "I can't lose you." As they struggled, Alex watched helplessly, his own fear gnawing at him. He knew he needed to help them, needed to find a way to bring them back together. But his own hallucinations were too strong, his sister's voice a constant, haunting presence. "Help me, Alex," she whispered. "Why didn't you save me?" "I'm sorry," he repeated, his voice breaking. "I tried. I'm so sorry." But even as he apologized, he knew it wasn't enough. The demon was winning, feeding off their fear and despair. In a moment of clarity, Alex realized what he needed to do. He needed to confront his own fear, to face the unknown and find a way to save his friends. "Stay with me," he whispered to himself, his resolve hardening. "I won't let you win." With a newfound determination, Alex turned back to his friends, his voice strong and unwavering. "Listen to me. We can beat this. We need to confront our fears, to face them head on." But his words were drowned out by the whispers, the demon's voice a mocking chorus. "Do you really think you can escape? You belong to me now." Alex ignored the voice, focusing on his friends. He knew he couldn't do this alone, knew they needed to stand together if they had any chance of surviving. "Mark, Sarah, Jason, Rachel, listen to me," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We can do this. We can beat it." One by one, his friends turned to him, their faces pale and haunted. But in their eyes, Alex saw a spark of hope, a glimmer of determination. "We can do this," he repeated, his voice firm. "We need to confront our fears, together." With a collective resolve, the group faced their hallucinations, each camper confronting their deepest fears. Sarah faced her mother, telling her she was strong enough to stand on her own. Mark faced his failures, accepting that he couldn't always be perfect, but could always try his best. Rachel faced the possibility of losing Jason, trusting in their love to keep them strong. Jason faced his loss of control, accepting that he couldn't protect everyone, but could always try. And Alex faced his sister, telling her he was sorry, but that he couldn't change the past. He had to let go, had to move forward. As they confronted their fears, the whispers grew fainter, the shadows retreating. The demon's power waned, its hold on them weakening. But it wasn't enough. "Stay strong," Alex urged, his voice a rallying cry. "We're almost there." With a final surge of determination, the group pushed forward, their fears no longer controlling them. The demon's voice grew desperate, its power slipping away. "No, you can't escape me," it roared, its form flickering in the darkness. But Alex and his friends stood their ground, their fear replaced by a newfound strength. They had confronted their inner demons, and in doing so, had weakened the whispering demon's hold on them. With a final defiant shout, Alex faced the demon, his voice unwavering. We're not afraid of you anymore." The demon let out a piercing scream, its form dissolving into the shadows. The forest fell silent, the oppressive darkness lifting. They had done it. They had survived. As the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, Alex and his friends collapsed in the clearing, their bodies and minds exhausted. The night had been a harrowing ordeal, but they had made it through. "We did it," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with awe and relief. "Yes, we did," Mark agreed, his expression one of weary triumph. Rachel and Jason held each other close, their bond stronger than ever. "We faced our fears," Rachel said softly. "Together." Alex looked around at his friends, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. They had confronted their deepest fears and emerged stronger for it. The whispering demon had tried to break them, but they had stood their ground and won. As the sunlight bathed the forest in a warm, golden glow, Alex knew they would never forget this night. The forest might still hold its secrets, but they had faced the darkness and come out victorious. "We should get out of here," Mark said, his practical side returning, "before anything else happens." The group nodded in agreement, their steps lighter as they made their way back through the forest. The path seemed less ominous in the daylight, the trees no longer looming threateningly overhead. As they emerged from the forest, the memories of the night began to fade, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and newfound strength. They had faced their fears and survived, and nothing could ever take that away from them. Weeks later, as Alex sat at his desk, writing the article about their harrowing experience, he reflected on the journey they had taken. The whispering demon might still lurk in the depths of Drakensberg Forest, but he and his friends had faced it and lived to tell the tale. The article would be his most powerful yet, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of confronting one's fears. As he typed the final words, he felt a sense of closure, knowing that he had finally laid his own demons to rest. Drakensberg Forest would always be a place of mystery and danger, but it was also a place where he and his friends had found their true strength. And that was a story worth telling. The late afternoon sun filtered through the dense canopy of Drakensberg Forest, casting long shadows across the ground as Emily Hartman and her friends made their way deeper into the woods. The air was crisp with the scent of pine and decaying leaves, and the ground crunched underfoot with each step they took. Emily glanced around at her companions, their faces lit with excitement and a touch of apprehension. It had been months since they had all been together like this, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant awaited them in these ancient woods. "Are you sure we're going the right way, Emily?" asked Jess, her best friend since college, who was always the first to voice her concerns. "Positive," Emily replied, consulting the map on her phone. "We should reach the clearing in about 10 minutes. It's supposed to be a beautiful spot." "Great," muttered Ben, adjusting the heavy pack on his shoulders. "I'm ready to set up camp and get a fire going. It's getting colder by the minute." Ben was the practical one, always prepared for any situation. His no-nonsense attitude and military training made him an invaluable part of the group. Emily admired his steadfastness, knowing they could rely on him if things got tough. Beside Ben, Megan and Tom walked hand in hand, their whispered conversations and shared glances a testament to their deep bond. They had been inseparable since high school, their relationship weathering the storms of adulthood, with a strength that Emily both envied and respected. As they continued deeper into the forest, the daylight began to wane, and the shadows grew longer and more pronounced. The eerie silence of the woods enveloped them, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a bird. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, though she dismissed it as paranoia brought on by the unsettling quietude of the forest. "We're here," Emily announced as they emerged into a small clearing. The campsite was perfect, surrounded by towering trees that offered protection from the wind. They quickly set to work, pitching tents and gathering firewood, the activity a welcome distraction from the growing sense of unease. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared in the sky, Ben set a fire blazing, and they all gathered around, the warm glow a comforting beacon in the darkness. They shared stories and laughter, the camaraderie lifting their spirits. Yet, as the hours passed and the fire began to dwindle, the oppressive silence of the forest returned, and with it, a creeping sense of dread. "What's that over there?" Megan asked suddenly, pointing to a spot just beyond the edge of the clearing. In the dim light, they could see something glinting among the fallen leaves. "Let's check it out," Emily said, standing up. The group followed her to the spot, their curiosity piqued. Half buried in the ground was an ornate mirror, its surface covered in dirt and moss. Emily knelt down and carefully brushed away the debris, revealing a beautifully crafted frame with intricate designs that seemed to writhe and twist in the flickering light of the fire. "Wow, this is amazing," Jess said, leaning in for a closer look. "I wonder how old it is." "Old enough to be creepy," Ben muttered, though there was a hint of curiosity in his voice as well. "We should be careful. You never know what kind of history something like this might have." Ignoring Ben's warning, Emily lifted the mirror from the ground, its surface surprisingly clean despite its burial. As she held it up, the firelight reflected off the glass, casting strange, distorted shadows around the clearing. "Let's take it back to the fire," Tom suggested. "Maybe we can figure out more about it in better light." As they returned to the fire, the mirror continued to cast eerie reflections, the shadows seeming to dance and flicker unnaturally. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror was watching them, its surface a window into something sinister. "Look at this," Megan said, pointing to the back of the mirror. "There are some engravings here. It looks like Latin." "Can anyone read it?" Jess asked, glancing around the group. "I can try," Emily said, her curiosity piqued. She had studied Latin in college and could make out some of the words. "It says something about reflections and truth and fear. It's a bit fragmented." "Great, so we found a haunted mirror," Ben said, his tone half joking. "Just what we needed." "Let's not jump to conclusions," Emily replied, though she couldn't deny the uneasy feeling growing in the pit of her stomach. "It's probably just an old relic with a spooky story attached to it." As night fully descended, they placed the mirror near the fire, its surface catching the light and reflecting their faces back at them in strange, distorted ways. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as she caught her reflection, the image seeming to twist and contort with an expression of fear that didn't match her own. "Okay, that's creepy," Jess said, her voice trembling slightly. "Let's just put it away for the night." But before anyone could move, the firelight flickered, and the reflections in the mirror seemed to come to life, their faces shifting and changing to reveal their darkest secrets and fears. Emily's heart raced as she saw her reflection morph into a twisted version of herself, her eyes filled with terror and despair. "What the hell is happening?" Tom exclaimed, his voice filled with panic. "I don't know," Emily replied, her voice shaking. "But I think we've unleashed something we don't understand." As the reflections continued to shift and change, the campers realized too late that they had uncovered an ancient, malevolent force. The mirror's sinister power was awakening, and their nightmare was just beginning. The night grew colder, and the campers huddled closer to the fire, their eyes never straying far from the mirror. Each time they glanced at it, they saw distorted reflections of themselves, twisted by fear and darkness. Emily felt a deep sense of foreboding, her instincts screaming that they needed to get rid of the mirror, but a strange compulsion kept them from doing so. "We need to understand what's happening," Emily said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. Maybe there's a way to break whatever power this mirror has. How do you propose we do that? Ben asked, his skepticism evident. We don't even know what we're dealing with. We start by researching the engravings, Emily replied, determination hardening her resolve. There has to be a clue in the Latin text. While you're doing that, we should set up a watch, Tom suggested. We can't let our guard down, not with that thing around. They agreed, and the group divided into shifts, each pair keeping an eye on the mirror and the surrounding forest, while the others tried to get some rest. Emily and Ben took the first watch, the fire crackling softly as they sat in tense silence. Do you really think we can figure this out? Ben asked after a while, his voice low. I have to believe we can, Emily replied, her gaze fixed on the mirror. We can't let it control us. As the night wore on, Emily studied the engravings on the back of the mirror, her mind working to piece together the fragmented Latin text. She could make out phrases about reflections revealing truth and fear being a gateway to the soul, but the full meaning eluded her. Ben, look at this, she said suddenly, pointing to a section of the text. It talks about facing one's fears to break the mirror's hold. Maybe that's the key. So we just have to confront whatever the mirror shows us? Ben asked, doubt in his voice. It sounds simple, but I think it goes deeper than that, Emily replied. We have to truly face our deepest fears, not just see them. As they continued to discuss their findings, the mirror's surface seemed to shimmer, drawing their attention. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she saw her reflection again, this time more vivid and lifelike. Her face was contorted with fear, her eyes wide and filled with terror. Emily, do you see that? Ben whispered, his voice trembling. I do, she replied, her voice barely audible. It's like it's trying to show us something. Suddenly, the mirror's surface darkened and the reflection shifted to reveal a different scene. Emily saw herself standing in a dark, unfamiliar room, surrounded by shadowy figures. Her reflection's eyes darted around in panic, and she could hear a faint whispering, like 1,000 voices murmuring in the darkness. What's happening? Ben asked, his voice rising in panic. I don't know, Emily replied, her eyes glued to the mirror. But I think it's showing us our worst fears. As they watched, the scene in the mirror changed again, this time showing Ben standing alone in a desolate landscape, his face twisted with fear and despair. The whispers grew louder, and Emily could almost make out the words, though they sent a chill down her spine. Ben, we have to wake the others, she said urgently. They need to see this. They quickly roused the rest of the group, who gathered around the mirror, their faces pale with fear and confusion. As they watched, the mirror continued to reveal their deepest fears, each reflection more terrifying than the last. This is insane, Jess said, her voice shaking. How is this even possible? I don't know, Emily replied, her mind racing. But we need to confront these fears if we're going to break the mirror's hold. But how do we do that? Megan asked, her eyes wide with fear. These aren't just normal fears. They're our worst nightmares. We have to face them head on, Emily said, her voice firm. We can't let the mirror control us. As they prepared to confront their fears, the mirror's surface began to ripple, and the reflections grew darker and more menacing. The whispers intensified, filling the air with a sense of dread and foreboding. We need to do this together, Emily said, her voice steady. We can't let the mirror tear us apart. With a collective resolve, the group stood before the mirror, their faces set with determination. They knew they were about to face their worst nightmares, but they also knew that their only chance of survival lay in confronting their fears head on. As the mirror's power grew stronger, the boundary between reality and the twisted reflections began to blur. The campers found themselves drawn into a nightmarish realm where their fears materialized into terrifying creatures. each one more horrifying than the last. Emily felt a cold hand grip her heart as she faced her reflection, the shadowy figures closing in around her. She knew she had to confront her fear, to stand her ground and not let the mirror's power consume her. "We can do this," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. "We have to." The air around them grew heavy and oppressive as the compares were drawn deeper into the nightmarish realm of the mirror. The forest clearing faded away, replaced by a dark, twisted landscape that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. The ground was uneven and treacherous, and the trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Emily felt a wave of nausea wash over her as she took in their surroundings. The whispers were louder here, a constant murmur of fear and despair that gnawed at her sanity. She glanced at her friends, their faces pale and eyes wide with terror. "We have to stay together," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Whatever happens, we can't let the mirror separate us." As they moved cautiously through the nightmarish landscape, Emily's mind raced, trying to make sense of their situation. She knew that their only hope of escape was to confront their fears and break the mirror's hold. But the path to doing so was shrouded in uncertainty. "Look over there," Jess whispered, pointing to a distant shape. "Is that another mirror?" The group approached the shape, their hearts pounding with dread. As they drew closer, they saw that it was indeed another mirror, identical to the one they had found in the clearing. Its surface was dark and foreboding, reflecting their fear-stricken faces with eerie clarity. "We have to face our fears," Emily said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "That's the only way to break the mirror's hold." "But how do we do that?" Megan asked, her voice shaking. "These aren't just normal fears. They're our worst nightmares come to life." "We have to confront them head-on," Emily replied, determination hardening her resolve. "We can't let the mirror control us." As they stood before the dark mirror, each camper felt a wave of terror wash over them, their deepest fears materializing into horrifying visions. Emily saw herself surrounded by shadowy figures, their eyes filled with malice and hatred. Jess saw herself drowning in a sea of darkness, the water closing in around her and suffocating her. Ben saw himself alone in a desolate wasteland, his friends' lifeless bodies scattered around him. "We can't let these visions control us," Emily said, her voice firm. "We have to face them and find a way to overcome them." With a collective resolve, the group steeled themselves and prepared to confront their fears. The dark mirror's surface began to ripple, and the twisted reflections grew darker and more menacing. The whispers intensified, filling the air with a sense of dread and foreboding. As they faced their fears, the campers realized that the key to breaking the mirror's hold lay in confronting their own inner demons. Emily focused on the shadowy figures surrounding her, refusing to let their malice and hatred overwhelm her. She took a deep breath and stood her ground, her voice steady and strong. "I won't let you control me," she said, her words cutting through the darkness. "I won't let you win." The shadowy figures recoiled, their power weakening as Emily's resolve grew stronger. She could feel the mirror's hold loosening, its malevolent influence waning. "Jess, Ben, Megan, focus on your fears," Emily urged, her voice filled with determination. "We can do this together." Jess took a deep breath and faced the suffocating darkness, her fear of drowning threatening to overwhelm her. She closed her eyes and focused on the memory of a warm, sunny day at the beach, the sound of the waves and the laughter of her friends filling her mind. As she embraced the positive memory, the darkness began to recede, the mirror's hold weakening. Ben faced the desolate wasteland, his heart aching at the sight of his friends' lifeless bodies. He took a deep breath and focused on the bond he shared with his friends, the moments of laughter and camaraderie that had brought them together. As he embraced the strength of their friendship, the wasteland began to dissolve, the mirror's power waning. Megan faced her own fear, the terror of losing control and succumbing to the darkness. She closed her eyes and focused on the love and support of her friends, the moments of joy and connection that had given her strength. As she embraced the power of their bond, the darkness began to fade, the mirror's hold weakening. As the campers confronted their fears, the dark mirror's surface began to crack, its malevolent influence breaking under the weight of their resolve. The whispers grew fainter, the sense of dread lifting as the mirror's power waned. "We're doing it," Emily said, her voice filled with hope. "We're breaking the mirror's hold." With a final collective effort, the campers faced their fears and shattered the dark mirror, its surface splintering into 1,000 shards. The nightmarish realm dissolved, and they found themselves back in the forest clearing, the morning light filtering through the trees. "We did it," Jess said, her voice filled with relief. "We broke the mirror's hold." Emily looked around at her friends, their faces tired but triumphant. They had faced their deepest fears and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. "We did it together," Emily said, her voice filled with pride. "We faced our fears and won." As the campers packed up their belongings and prepared to leave the forest, they knew that they had been forever changed by their experience. They had confronted their inner demons and emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. The ancient mirror lay shattered in the clearing, its malevolent power broken. But as they left the forest, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was far from over. The mirror's dark history still lingered, and its malevolent influence might one day return. For now, though, they had won. They had faced their fears and triumphed, their strength and unity a testament to the power of friendship and the resilience of the human spirit. The journey back to civilization was a quiet one, each camper lost in their thoughts as they walked through the forest. The events of the previous night weighed heavily on their minds, the experience leaving a lasting impression that would stay with them forever. As they reached the edge of the forest and emerged into the daylight, Emily took a deep breath, the fresh air filling her lungs and washing away the remnants of fear. She glanced at her friends, their faces reflecting a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We made it," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "We're safe." "Yeah," Ben replied, his voice tinged with awe. "I can't believe we actually did it." Jess nodded, her eyes filled with a new sense of determination. "We faced our worst fears and came out stronger. I never thought I'd be able to do something like that." "We couldn't have done it without each other," Megan said, her voice soft but resolute. "Our bond is what gave us the strength to overcome the mirror's power." As they continued their journey back to town, the group reflected on their experience, the lessons they had learned, and the strength they had found in one another. They knew that their lives would never be the same, but they also knew that they were stronger for having faced their fears together. When they finally reached their destination, they parted ways, each of them carrying the memory of their ordeal and the bond that had brought them through it. Emily returned to her teaching job with a renewed sense of purpose, her experience in the forest giving her a deeper understanding of the importance of confronting one's fears and supporting one another. In the weeks and months that followed, the group stayed in close contact, their bond strengthened by their shared ordeal. They often spoke of their experience in the forest, the dark mirror, and the nightmarish realm they had faced. Though the memories were haunting, they served as a reminder of their resilience and the power of their friendship. But even as they moved forward with their lives, the shadow of the mirror lingered in the back of their minds. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was only the beginning, that the mirror's dark history still held secrets yet to be uncovered. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, Emily received a message from Jess. It was a photo of an old book, the cover worn and the pages yellowed with age. The title read, "The History of the Drakensberg Forest, Legends and Lore." I found this at an antique shop, Jess's message read. I think it might have some answers about the mirror. Are you up for another adventure? Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she stared at the photo. She knew that their journey was far from over, that the mirror's dark legacy still held mysteries waiting to be uncovered, but she also knew that, with her friends by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With a sense of determination, Emily replied to Jess's message, her heart filled with a mix of fear and excitement. Let's do it. We need to uncover the truth. As she prepared for their next adventure, Emily knew that they had only scratched the surface of the mirror's dark history, but she also knew that they had the strength and resilience to face whatever challenges lay ahead, their bond unbreakable and their resolve unwavering. The group reconvened at Emily's apartment, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity and determination. Jess had brought the old book with her, its worn pages filled with stories and legends about the Drakensberg forest and the ancient mirror they had uncovered. We need to understand the mirror's history, Emily said, her voice steady. There has to be something in this book that can help us. As they pored over the book, they discovered a section that detailed the legend of the mirror. It was said to be an ancient artifact, crafted by a sorcerer who had trapped a malevolent demon within its reflective surface. The sorcerer had created the mirror to contain the demon's power, but over the centuries the mirror had been lost and forgotten, its dark history fading into legend. The mirror was designed to reveal a person's darkest fears and secrets, Emily read aloud. The demon feeds on fear, using the mirror's reflections to manipulate and control its victims. But how did it end up in the forest? Ben asked, his brow furrowed in thought. It says here that the mirror was hidden away to prevent the demon from escaping, Jess replied, pointing to a passage in the book. The forest was chosen because it was believed to be a place of power, where the mirror's influence could be contained. So when we uncovered the mirror, we released the demon's power, Megan said, her voice filled with realization. That's why we experience those nightmarish visions. We need to find a way to contain the demon again, Emily said, her mind racing. There has to be something in this book that can help us. As they continued to read, they discovered a ritual that could be used to trap the demon back within the mirror. The ritual required the participants to confront their fears once more, but this time they would have to do so with a clear understanding of the mirror's power and the strength of their bond. We have to perform this ritual, Emily said, her voice filled with determination. It's the only way to make sure the demon stays trapped. But it's dangerous, Ben replied, his concern evident. We've already faced our fears once. What if the mirror's power is stronger this time? We'll do it together, Emily said, her resolve unwavering. Our bond is what gives us strength. We can overcome the mirror's power again. With a collective resolve, the group prepared for the ritual, gathering the necessary materials and making their way back to the forest. As they stood in the clearing where they had first discovered the mirror, the air grew heavy with a sense of foreboding. We need to stay focused, Emily said, her voice steady. Remember, we have to face our fears together. As they began the ritual, the mirror's surface shimmered and the twisted reflections reappeared, their faces contorted with fear and darkness. The whispers grew louder, filling the air with a sense of dread. We can't let the mirror control us, Emily said, her voice firm. We have to confront our fears and break its hold. With a collective effort, the group faced their fears once more, their determination unwavering. The mirror's power seemed stronger this time, the visions more vivid and terrifying. But as they stood together, their bond gave them strength, and they were able to confront their inner demons with a newfound resolve. As the ritual reached its climax, the mirror's surface began to crack, its malevolent influence breaking under the weight of their resolve. The whispers grew fainter, the sense of dread lifting as the mirror's power waned. "We're doing it," Emily said, her voice filled with hope. "We're breaking the mirror's hold." With a final collective effort, the group shattered the mirror, its surface splintering into 1,000 shards. The demon's power was contained once more, its malevolent influence broken. "We did it," Jess said, her voice filled with relief. "We contained the demon." Emily looked around at her friends, their faces tired but triumphant. They had faced their deepest fears and emerged victorious once more, their bond stronger than ever. "We did it together," Emily said, her voice filled with pride. "We faced our fears and won." As they left the forest, they knew that their journey was far from over. The mirror's dark history still held secrets yet to be uncovered, and the threat of the demon's return loomed ever present. But with their bond unbreakable and their resolve unwavering, they knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Months had passed since the group had performed the ritual and contained the demon's power within the shattered mirror. Life had returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the memory of their ordeal remained a constant presence in their minds. Emily had continued her teaching job with a renewed sense of purpose, her experience in the forest giving her a deeper understanding of the importance of confronting one's fears and supporting one another. Her friends had also found new strength and determination in their lives, their bond a testament to the power of friendship and resilience. One evening, as they gathered at Emily's apartment for a quiet get-together, Jess brought out the old book they had found in the antique shop. Its pages were filled with stories and legends, each one a reminder of the dark history they had uncovered. "There's still so much we don't know," Jess said, her voice filled with curiosity. "The mirror's legend is just one part of the forest's history." "We need to keep investigating," Emily replied, her determination unwavering. "There are still secrets waiting to be uncovered." As they discussed their plans for future adventures, the group felt a renewed sense of purpose. They knew that their journey was far from over, that the mirror's dark legacy still held mysteries waiting to be revealed. But they also knew that, with their bond unbreakable and their resolve unwavering, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. With a sense of determination, Emily looked around at her friends, their faces filled with a mix of excitement and resolve. They had faced their deepest fears and emerged stronger, their bond a testament to the power of friendship and resilience. As they prepared for their next adventure, Emily knew that they had only scratched the surface of the mirror's dark history. But she also knew that they had the strength and resilience to face whatever challenges lay ahead, their bond unbreakable and their resolve unwavering. For now they were ready to uncover the truth, to face their fears, and to embrace the power of their friendship. The mirror's dark legacy may have cast a long shadow, but their light would shine through, guiding them on their journey and illuminating the path ahead. The Northcliff Forest loomed before the group of seasoned campers as they arrived at the edge of the dense woodland. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the ancient trees and enveloping the forest in an eerie twilight. Sarah Collins, leading the group, glanced at her map, her practical mind already calculating the best route for their expedition. "All right, everyone, let's set up camp here," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the growing chill in the air. "We have a lot of ground to cover, and the sooner we get settled, the better." The group, consisting of Sarah's close friends, Ben, a tech-savvy photographer, Jess, a history enthusiast, Megan, a nature lover, and Tom, an adventure-seeking survivalist, began unloading their gear and setting up their tents. The forest, while beautiful, had an unsettling quality that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. As night fell, the forest grew quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. The campers gathered around the campfire, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. Have you guys noticed how quiet it is here? Ben remarked, his voice tinged with unease. It's almost unnatural. Probably just the lack of wildlife, Megan suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Jess, flipping through her notebook of forest legends, added, "This place is known for its strange occurrences. Local legends speak of a demon that haunts these woods, preying on people's fears." Sarah, ever the skeptic, dismissed Jess's comment with a wave. "It's just folklore. We're here for research, remember?" But as the night progressed, the campers couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Strange symbols began to appear, carved into the trees around their campsite, and soft, indistinguishable whispers seemed to drift through the forest, carrying with them an undercurrent of dread. The first sign of trouble came early the next morning when Tom went missing. His tent was empty, and his gear was scattered around the campsite. Panic set in as the campers searched frantically for their friend. "Tom, where are you?" Sarah called out, her voice echoing through the trees. Hours passed with no sign of him. As the sun began to set again, the whispers returned, more insistent and menacing. The symbols on the trees seemed to grow more elaborate, their meanings becoming increasingly cryptic. "I'm telling you, something is wrong with this place," Ben said, his voice shaky. "We need to get out of here." "Let's not jump to conclusions," Sarah replied, though her own anxiety was palpable. "We need to find Tom and figure out what's going on." The group's search led them deeper into the forest, where the air grew colder and the shadows seemed to lengthen unnaturally. As darkness fell, the campers began to experience hallucinations, visions of their deepest fears materializing before their eyes. Megan saw ghostly figures of loved ones lost to her, while Jess was haunted by shadowy apparitions from the legends she had studied. Each hallucination fed on their personal fears, exacerbating their paranoia and mistrust of one another. As the days wore on, the group's unity began to fracture. Paranoia and distrust grew, with each camper suspecting the others of being behind the strange occurrences. The once cohesive group was now fractured, their fear and mistrust threatening to tear them apart. "It's one of us," Jess accused, her eyes wild with fear. "Someone is making this happen." "That's ridiculous," Sarah shot back. "We're being manipulated by something supernatural. We need to focus on surviving and finding Tom." But survival became increasingly difficult as the demon's influence intensified. The whispers became a constant presence, filling their minds with terrifying suggestions and creating an overwhelming sense of dread. One night, as they huddled around the diminishing campfire, the demon revealed itself in a moment of chilling clarity. It appeared as a shadowy, indistinct figure, its presence felt rather than seen. The air grew heavy with a palpable sense of malevolence, and the forest seemed to close in around them. "You're all mine," the demon's voice echoed, a guttural whisper that sent shivers down their spines. "Your fears are my feast." With their sanity hanging by a thread, the campers realized that their only chance of survival lay in uncovering the forest's dark secrets and confronting the demon directly. They began to piece together the history of the forest and the symbols they had seen, discovering a ritual that could potentially banish the demon. "We have to perform this ritual," Sarah said, her voice filled with grim determination. "It's our only chance." The ritual required them to confront their fears head-on, but it was a daunting task given their fractured state. They gathered the necessary materials and performed the ritual in the heart of the forest, where the demon's power was strongest. As they began the ritual, the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to warp and twist around them. The demon's influence intensified, creating terrifying illusions and attempting to drive them to despair. "You have to stay focused," Sarah urged, her voice resolute despite the overwhelming fear. "We have to confront our fears together." With a collective effort, the group faced their deepest fears. The ritual's incantations reverberated through the forest, and the symbols on the trees began to glow with an otherworldly light. The demon's presence seemed to waver, its power faltering under the weight of their combined resolve. As the ritual reached its zenith, the forest around them was alive with a cacophony of eerie sounds and shifting shadows. The demon's form grew increasingly distorted, flickering in and out of existence as the ritual's power began to take hold. "You cannot escape me," the demon snarled, its voice echoing with a haunting rage. "I am the darkness within you." The air crackled with malevolent energy, and the forest seemed to writhe in pain. The campers, exhausted and on the brink of collapse, clung to the hope that their efforts would succeed. The ritual's final incantation loomed, a desperate plea for deliverance from the horrors that had plagued them. Sarah's voice trembled as she recited the final words of the ritual. Her eyes, locked onto the demon's shifting form, were filled with a mixture of fear and determination. The symbols on the trees blazed with an intense light, casting eerie shadows that danced and twisted around them. The demon's roar of frustration echoed through the forest, its form beginning to dissolve into the mists. The once ominous symbols started to fade, their power dissipating along with the demon's influence. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the sinister whispers that had filled the air were replaced by a sudden, eerie silence. The campers emerged from the forest as dawn broke, their faces drawn and pale but marked by a hard-won relief. The once unfathomable darkness had lifted, and the Northcliff forest began to return to its natural state. The malevolent energy that had plagued them seemed to dissipate with the morning light. Tom's body was eventually discovered in a remote part of the forest. His loss weighed heavily on the group, a somber reminder of the horrors they had faced. Despite their victory, the trauma of the experience left an indelible mark on each of them. As they made their way back to civilization, Sarah glanced back at the looming trees of Northcliff. The forest, though quieter now, held a dark and unsettling memory that would linger in their minds. The legend of the demon and the trials they had faced became an enduring part of their lives. The group's bond, forged through shared adversity, remained strong despite the horrors they had endured. They knew that they had faced something truly terrifying and had survived, but the shadows of Northcliff would forever haunt their memories. The forest, now seemingly at peace, remained a place of dark secrets and unspoken fears. The demon's presence, while vanquished, left behind an aura of lingering dread, a chilling reminder of the forest's malevolent past. Though the campers had escaped its grasp, the shadows of Northcliff would forever linger in their hearts and minds, a haunting legacy of their ordeal.
Thank you for joining us on this spine-chilling adventure. If you dared to face the darkness with us, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more terrifying tales that will keep you up at night. Hit the bell icon to be the first to experience our next story. Until then, keep the lights on and remember, fear is never too far away.